Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Should You Pull. This time we're going to be discussing the Siege Skadi banner. Um, I know I haven't been uploading very frequently, but nonetheless, I wanted to get this banner out and done with just before the CC event starts. So without further ado, let's just sort of jump right in. I'm actually currently on my main account, and the reason for that being is that, with the exception of Province, I pretty much have all of these operators at Elite 2 um, and pretty well leveled, and have used all the four of them like quite extensively. Um, so yeah, I'll be able to just sort of show you guys like stats and stuff because I know beforehand it was kind of um, like disappointing when I'm just like, well, I don't have this operator on this account or whatever. So let's start off with Spectre. So we've already done the guard guide video. So Spectre falls within the AoE archetype. I have her over here. And Spectre's main niche is in her survivability, which mainly comes from her second skill, Bone Fracture. So it prevents her HP from falling below 1. So pretty much she becomes immortal. While giving her a sizable attack boost, it does come with a demerit in terms of a 10-second self stun um, after the duration. But nonetheless, this skill is actually a pretty good skill, and there are certain like niche instances, like particularly within contingency contracts, where some strategies involve around like just taking all of the bonuses to enemy damage, and it pretty much becomes impossible to like survive hits in those scenarios because they'll just be able to one shot even like the toughest defenders. And so, pretty much the only way to survive is through the usage of a skill like this, which actually prevents your operator from dying. Uh, Skill duration is pretty solid at 13 seconds. I believe it goes up a second per each mastery point, so I believe it'll cap out at 15 seconds. And the self stun, while like bad, obviously, does have some benefits in terms of letting her not get targeted by melee enemies, which sort of lets her talent kick in. Her talent's pretty solid once you upgrade her to the point where it gives her the second portion. She'll gain this first portion like pretty much right away, and then gains the restore max HP by 2% per second, which is really nice and helps her in terms of just surviving enemies and holding a lane. It's been I've really liked using her just in maps where like you might also have to deal with map damage, just because that regeneration can really just aid in her survivability. These are her overall stat spread, obviously, on the offensive end, but she's got great skills that aid with her ability to survive. Obviously, as an AoE guard, you do want to invest in getting her to E2 just so that she gets that 3 block. And also, this is a skin right now. That's actually not what she normally looks like. That's her E1 and her E2 skill. I believe the skill is still in the shop right now. If you want to get it, it's being rerun right now. It was released like a long time ago. And then second on that list, I believe, was Province. And Province, I do have, but I think she's only at like Elite 1 somewhere. Yeah, I didn't like fully level her up yet, especially since then I got Schwartz and kind of like pivoted, and I then got Sari, and I've been doing all kind of pivots on my main account. So Province is falls into that sort of close range sniper archetype, because we've already discussed the sniper class. If you recall, like, this archetype is capable of doing some really impressive damage, but in order to like get that impressive damage, you kind of have to line things up. So her second skill gives her a massive attack steroid, but she'll only attack enemies that are below 8 or at 80% or lower. And her Hunter's Arrows talent requires that the enemy is in the frontal grid in order to like activate, in order to get the best percent chance for this damage activation. Otherwise, it falls to a 20%, which is kind of unreliable, and even at 50%. It's a coin flip. But obviously, when everything is procking, uh, she's able to output like crazy high numbers, which is really, really amazing. If you recall, we said that like this archetype wasn't really necessary, but like nonetheless is I think is still nice to have. She's one of those characters where I would probably flesh out your core team first and then like sort of circle back to her. Um, and yeah, she's very much worth investing into. I think in the long run, in terms of like, once you've got your main core fleshed out, and she's not a bad operator by any means. So if you do get her, definitely consider it. And then Texas was the last of our 5-star units, and she is a standard like DP on skill Vanguard. She falls on the more offensive side, just higher attack than defense, and like HP is always kind of low for these classes. But yeah, she falls on the offensive side. It's one of my more recent operators. I haven't like actually like maxed out her trust yet. Um, her main thing is for her second skill, as is the case with all of these operators. Her first skill is just sort of the generic instant DP gain, and in her case, she gains instant DP still, but also deals 135 arch damage twice, and then she stuns a target for 2 seconds. Like this is the main skill that people will be using for her. The arch damage is really good because it lets her, this one skill at least, deal solid damage to higher defense enemies. And the stun is just obviously really good for keeping your units alive and stalling out enemy units. It's also got a pretty like fairly solid like range. It's kind of like a crossish kind of range. So pretty solid range. The one thing that I would say about this skill is you do need to like worry about how you're using it, just because sometimes you'll be using it and not hitting any enemies just so that you could get the DP gain. But other times you kind of are using it for the damage and the stun, in which case, it's really hard to get double, like both maximum value, like DP generation, and maximum like CC duration and damage off of this skill at the same time. Yeah, just because of the way it works. There are times like I'll just use this with no enemies around just for the DP, and there are going to be times when you're going to have to hold off and not generate the DP and use it when the enemy gets a little bit closer, which kind of sucks. But nonetheless, that's like kind of minorish gripe, not at all anything that'll detract from her being a good unit. Her talent also gives her bonus DP. It's 1 bonus DP at Elite 1, and then it goes up to 2 at Elite 2. And that's just great, particularly in DP like starved challenges. There were moments where I would run Texas along with Zima here, just to sort of like chop off her cost, just to sort of get a unit out quickly as possible. But again, that's something that you're only really going to find in challenge missions. This is also an outfit too, in case you're wondering. That's what she regularly looks like, and that is her E2. And this outfit is, I believe, also being rerun right now. We can actually double check that just in case. Outfits, yeah, they're being rerun right now. Yeah, for a few more days, or today actually. When we get to our 6 stars, we have Siege and Skadi. So I guess we'll cover Siege first. She is your upgrade over Texas. That's what she looks like at Elite 250. So still on the offensive stat line, with just sort of a bit more like defenses, obviously, in terms of like HP and defense over Texas, which is pretty good. Obviously, being a 6-star, she's got 3 skills. So yeah, let's go over those. The second skill is going to be the one that I think most people end up using. It deals good damage and deals 3 DP. That looks kind of disappointing, like just 3 DP, but you can actually stack up charges with this. And once you get to level 7, I believe her charges cap out at 3, which is pretty good. And then upgrading them, upgrading the mastery for each of these, like once you get to like max mastery, she actually starts with 10 out of 10 SP, so she gets an immediate charge right away, which is really good. And this skill just sort of like, it lets her deal good damage to enemies while also generating DP. And this gives her quite a lot of staying power. I feel like compared to like other vanguards where usually you're just going to get them out there to generate that DP, and then you're going to quickly replace them with stronger frontline units, whether they be defenders or guards. And that's sort of like the normal flow of things. But Siege, I feel like, does have some staying power. There are maps where you can definitely like keep her there the entire map, and she's able to just like sort of deal enough damage and tank enough damage. Obviously, like with the aid of a healer and whatnot, that she's able to hold her own and stick around for a bit. She's often kind of considered to be like a pseudo guard in that respect, and her third skill is kind of like the main reason. Just it gives her massive attack bonuses, removes the DP generation, and has a solid chance of stunning enemies. With that skill on, yeah, she really does sort of become a pseudo guard, being able to just sort of hold the line quite well. She pretty much becomes your cheapest two guard, pseudo guard, if you will. Her talents are pretty like, yeah, like whatever. You get bonus attack and defense to all vanguards, so some supportive bonus if you're running two or more vanguards. And the second skill just aids her with generating more DP, particularly like with her second skill. Pretty good stuff. All in all, definitely worth having and leveling up if you do happen to get her. The last 6-star was Skadi, and she falls into the 1v1 archetype. So I had mentioned before, like Melantha as being a good 3-star unit in this archetype, and she Skadi here falls into that same archetype, just at a higher rank, double the stars. So she's got the same like high HP, high attack, but sort of like disappointing defense. Pretty like solid, cheap cost. Obviously, like Melantha's going to be quite a bit cheaper than her just because of the star difference. Um, and one block. Uh, Her skills are all focused around pretty much damage, which is basically what you want out of this class. The first one is just a flat out attack and attack speed buff, which is nice. The second skill is a pretty popular choice. This just means that it lets you like drop her down immediately where the enemy is and get the full bonus. So you just get a massive attack buff for a few seconds immediately after she's deployed. And these like increase with mastery, obviously. And so yeah, this just means like you just have her in your squad, and whenever the boss appears, you just drop her right in front of them and let her take care of it. 120% is insane, especially with her already high attack. The third one is requires a little bit more setup. It's attack, defense, and HP plus 100. It lasts 41 seconds. Takes quite a bit of time to charge, obviously, with 90. Not a skill I'll be using very often, especially since it lasts 41 seconds. But it lasts 41 seconds, which is obviously a pretty solid duration. And plus 100 to everything. Pretty much turns her into a boss pretty much. She's rocking 6k HP, she's rocking like 1800 attack, even her defense goes up to like over 500, which is sizable. All in all, this she pretty much becomes a boss, and that's obviously really good. Very few enemies are going to really survive or like kill her when her third skill is up, apart from like again like crazy like challenges and stuff, or CC contracts where you're like having your defense and like crazy increasing the enemy's attacks. But yeah, uh, aside from that, she's got a talent that kind of aids in the hella drop strategy, particularly with her second skill. Works well with her third skill too, actually. And that's swift action, so redeployment time minus 10 seconds. That's just going to help you get more value out of the second skill just because you could drop her, use up the skill, and then retreat her. And whenever another key enemy comes, you could get her out that much faster. It works actually well with her third skill as well, just because. So what'll happen is if you get the skill to 90 and then you use the skill, you proc your 41 seconds are done. It actually does become cheaper to retreat her and then redeploy her again so that she starts off with the 60 out of 90, rather than like actually charging the skill all the way back up to 90 from 0. So that swift action actually does help her out a bit with her second and third skills. The first skill is kind of like Mash. 14 to Abyssal Hunters. There's only 2 in the game right now, and that's herself and Spectre. So there is, some synergy within this banner. So that pretty much covers it for each of the individual operators. All in all, I do think that this is definitely a banner that you should consider pulling for, especially if you're lacking any of these operators or members within this archetype. There's no operator here that I feel is like bad or even mediocre or subpar. I think in terms of this banner, the one that's probably like the most niche would probably be Province, and even then I do feel that like she definitely does have value with her high damage. She can be like a boss killer, and that's definitely not bad. uh, Again, kind of like niche-ish, but like still very good. And Texas, maybe just because like her 6-star counterpart is in the same banner, so you probably would rather get Siege over Texas. But that's again like super minor gripes, just because even if you do get Texas as opposed to Siege, like you're still getting a really good operator in it, in its own right. So that's, like kind of like minor gripes with this banner. I think this happened before where like we had a 5-star variant and their direct upgrade in the same banner, and it's kind of disappointing to get the 5-star variant. But Texas is a well-loved operator, and she's also like pretty good for gameplay in my opinion as well. So nothing here is bad. I mean, there is another banner coming probably shortly, the Bagpipe banner, in which case, and that's like a hotly wanted operator as well. So you might not want to like roll like super hard, but if you're like a new player, yeah, I definitely think this is a good banner to roll on. And that's pretty much going to be it for this video. I'm hoping to get out more videos in the future, but thanks everyone for watching.